stakeholder. I would really like to draw in your expertise in terms of Africa's case, particularly its need to decarbonize in line with the rest of the globe, but it's also unique needs as it needs to increase access to energy. What is that picture like for the continent?
Okay, so this is a very important question because we're very clear about we need to transition, the world needs to go green, it's our planet, we need to take care of it. But we need to do it in the African context so we can do it right. If you look at what's happening in Africa now, if you have 600 million already don't have access to electricity, which means, and if you look at the statistics in the hospitals, around 500,000 people die because of this biomass burning for them at home. And at the same time, you have around 400 million that don't have clean water access because there is no desalination, no electricity. And the last calculation of this is like around 400 million deaths, not alone the people who got sick. We're talking about death cases. Looking at this context, give us to think that we need to transition Africa, but we need to do it correctly. Because also, parallel to this case, we have also countries in Africa that their economy really dependent on oil and gas. And we cannot just unplug and say transition tomorrow, but we have to have a plan to take them there. So having looked at all of this context and understanding that Africa has to be done in a gradual manner, while at the same time we see that while we're having gaps in our financing, like in oil and energy, around 40 billion at least, and around the infrastructure, 70 billion to 100 billion, coupled with international financier pulling out of the continent. This is a recipe of disaster if we don't put the right financing in place behind the African people and behind the African banks and countries. So the reason why we needed a bank in the middle, like Energy Bank, is that we need someone who will take the context of Africa, transition slowly Africa into the cleaner energy, but at the main time does not leave them alone. We keep financing their projects, their infrastructure, their oil until we can go to gas. And at the same time, Afreximbank will create capacity for which we can start to even more focus on green energy and transition, helping those economies to diversify. So it is part of a very critical plan for Africa to transition into the right type of energy, but in a way that does not create disaster for the people or the countries.
So you've painted a picture in terms of the need for Africa's energy mix and not the complete disincentivizing those economies that are still reliant on oil and gas. But another aspect is the money, the financing that is needed, particularly for the need for an African energy bank to come in and solve that financing gap. One, just give us an outlook in terms of the current finance gap and some of the barriers that are the reason as to why inroads are not being made to achieve this goal faster.
Okay, so as we discussed, the gap is at least 40 billion plus in energy and 70 billion plus in infrastructure for energy and even infrastructure to transfer energy. But the reason why is not only the withdrawal of international funds slowly, but also because I think government need to adopt more policies and be more agile and aggressive into implementing structure of PPPs and getting the private sector engaged. They need to work with multilaterals and strengthen their multilaterals. If countries around Africa look at the strength that they will have if their multilaterals and their own banks are strong in terms of putting their reserve with them, in terms of putting capital with them, they will have the bank that will carry them when they want to develop their plans. The other thing is there's a lot of work that we can do with ECAs, with different countries around the world, like the GCC and the others, to attract it. So there is a gap, there is a challenge that we need all to be more agile because we cannot be late to addressing this issue and we need to work very fast. But this time there is a ways that people can now maneuver into to secure this. One of them is the creation of Energy Bank to collect this together and really focus the continent's resources into the content development. It's very critical, and a lot of this discussion also goes into how can countries use their resources to build capital for developments. And if you look at the raw resources, so the capital is famous of exporting raw material, not value-added material. So most of our countries export cotton And with the same cotton they import, the garment of the same cotton they exported at a much expensive, more price. They export oil and get the refined oil. They export wood and then buy furniture. And it's a story that is not really good for the capital. And this is where we are helping. If we can help more into its value addition, we create capacity that can do towards this project. So a lot of work we're trying to do around the capital, the countries, us and the other multilaterals that need to take us up to the value chain. Some of our raw material need to go into creating capital for us, and some of our raw material need to go into value addition so that we create more margins for us. And it's a story of balance between them.